Dr. Bev Scott, the founder and CEO of IYAI. We're delighted to have you here today. This is a very, very important subject. Okay, this whole issue of we know that technology and the impact of technology, it's not just in public transportation, it's all around us. Okay, and we want to really make sure to lift this up, to have a very, very candid, not just conversation, but where are we going? Okay, who's accountable? What is an organization need to do versus what do people need to do? What does it really mean in terms of responsible implementation of what is truly a societal transformation that is taking place? Okay. We have our critical conversation series at Introducing Youth to American Infrastructure, Inc. every year. And there were two subjects and topics that were identified this year. One is the area of transportation funding and finance. And I really want to thank Sharon Green and Asha Weinstein Agrawal for helping to anchor that. The other was very much the whole area in terms of implementation of new technologies, a lot of support in that area from the Jacksonville Transportation Authority. Also, I can't help but to thank Amalgamated Transit Union for saying, of all things, this is a time that we really need to keep it real. And so these are going to be just real conversations, and also American Public Transportation Association. So let me say, wonderful group. I couldn't ask for, because I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Karen Philbrick in a minute. But I'm going to say to you this, three things. Number one, this is not partisan, bipartisan, whatever. There is no national plan in this area, period. Okay. There is no national plan. There is no national workforce plan. So be clear that the kinds of things that we're talking about grappling with are not unique to the public transportation sector. The second thing is that of all things, we need to be guided by some principles. And so I would submit to you today that those principles are three. One, we want to make sure that we end up best in class. Best in class. The other is that there will be no disposable people. And the third is no stranded communities. Now, we got a major script to write together, okay? And figuring that out with those guideposts, which means we don't get to just do transportation and mobility and throw the hard stuff like digital divide to somebody else to do, okay? So with that, no, it's not easy, okay? And I got to put a big shout out to my American Public Transportation Association. Thank you for being the platinum sponsor for our program. I turn it now to someone that I have just the most tremendous respect for. I think she's probably one of the best facilitators I've ever seen, and certainly in terms of a professional and a colleague. And that is Dr. Karen Philbrick, and a wonderful panel. And if you would take us away, thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Bev Scott. It's a real privilege to be with you today. And for those who have joined us, if you want to hear more about her expertise and the way that she leads, we have a wonderful fellowship interview of her sharing her life lessons and best practices for success. Later on during our webinar, I will drop a link to that in chat so you too can learn from her even further. But for today's purpose, we're just so delighted you've joined us, because this candid conversation will discuss the hot topic of labor and management in this fastest growing age of technology and artificial intelligence, something we're reading about every single day. But we really need to understand this perspective from the individual to the country as a whole, and how we navigate, manage, and plan for the future collectively. These conversations, as Bev mentioned, are always open, candid. They're not about persuasion. They're about education and understanding a path forward. Today, we're joined by 5 experts. Each will have 7 minutes to discuss this topic from their unique area of expertise. We will follow that with a moderated Q&A session. If you joining us have your own questions, please drop those into chat and we will get to them, and as many as we possibly can during our time together. I'm Dr. Karen Philbrick, Executive Director of the Mineta Transportation Institute at San Jose State University. We're a university transportation center designed to improve the mobility of people and goods. And we do that through surface transportation research, which we've worked with Bev on, technology transfer, we're doing it right now, education, and of course, workforce development. So we're going to just kick it off. I invite you to look up each of these speakers. They have such rich bios and just distinctive career paths. But we've got a lot to talk about, so I'm not going to delve into that. But please look them up. They're wonderful professionals, and they're always happy to help and to connect. So I'm going to start by introducing each panelist in alphabetical order. If you could just raise your hand when I say your name, that would be great. Joining us, she may be present, but she's come. All right, Tiffany Gunter. She's the CEO of Suburban Mobility Authority for Regional Transportation, better known as SMART. One thing I like to do when we are together in a panel or a webinar is to share a fun fact about each speaker. You can read their history of success, but it's fun to get to know people. And if we're going to build the workforce of the future, it's necessary to break down the silos in communication and in the hierarchy of what we do. So with that in mind, I want to share Tiffany's fun fact. She, she has studied martial arts and she's learning how to roller skate. So if anybody also has an interest in roller skating, you guys should connect. Following her, we're going to have Antonio Moss, and he is the Senior Public Sector Industry Digital Strategist for Transportation at Microsoft. Antonio, that was a mouthful, and I invite you during your comments to correct me if it didn't flow just right. Now, in his free time, he referees Division I basketball. That sounds like a good time, and you're going to have stuff to talk about with Greg Regan, who is the next person I'm introducing. He is the president of the AFL-CIO Transportation Trades Department Union. He's also a trustee on the Mineta Transportation Institute board. His fun fact, he still holds his own in ice hockey with players half his age. I love that about you. Love that, Greg. And he also slays on the golf course. So you see, we've got some athletes with us today. And then we've got Paul Tolliver, who is also a Mineta board member for a number of years. Paul, it is so good to be with you today. He's the president of New Age Industries. He's a trailblazing public transportation leader in technology. And importantly, he was inducted into the APTA Hall of Fame in 2019, which is the epitome of success in the transit world. Good to see you, Paul.
Thank you.
Finally, we round out with Iola Williams. She's deputy counsel at CAP Metro. And importantly, she's an APTA emerging lead, she's in the APTA Emerging Leader class of 2026. That didn't come out very smoothly. But her fun fact is she likes being a transit lawyer, but she's actually a singer. And she sings in an Austin-based soul rock band called Relentless Jones. So when she kicks off her 7-minute overview, she's going to start by singing, and we're really looking forward to that. So with that, let's just start with Greg, the president of the AFL-CIO. He's going to talk about the State of the Union and what's underway. Greg, please take it away.
Sure, and thank you for both Dr. Scott and Karen for those lovely introductions. I think first of all, I think this is one of the most interesting challenges, policy challenges that we face as a country, especially in the transportation sector, but more broadly throughout the economy as well. And while it's challenging and it's interesting and it's new in so many ways, it's also actually rather familiar. The Transportation Trades Department represents 39 unions across all modes of transportation, whether it's for manufacturing, building trades, aviation, maritime, longshore, transit, rail. Basically, if it moves, we represent the people who build, operate, and maintain all of those systems. And so when I say it's new, but it's also familiar, it's because the workers I represent have been dealing with technological changes for over 100 years. These unions have seen the massive changes from old school manufacturing to the modern mechanized world we see now that is oftentimes more of a computer science job than an actual physical job. We've seen containerization completely change the international shipping industry. We've seen electrification come in for rail and for transit. And each and every one of these technological changes created a massive challenge in terms of how do we properly integrate new technologies and new advancement into our existing mature systems, ones that millions of people, every single person in this country relies on transportation, relies on it on a day-to-day basis. So as we look at the challenges, I think that there are a lot of cautionary tales over the past, and then there are also a lot of opportunities for how we can address this. And I do think that we need to look at it as a comprehensive overall economic policy agenda, not simply about what we can do, but what we should do. So when I talk about that, when it comes to AI or even automated technology, it is astounding what the technology can do. It's astounding to see how we've been able to, like harness the power of data and collection and computers to develop these systems that we have right now. But how do we integrate them safely into our overall system and do it in a way that empowers people, not simply just allows a small group of people to make profits, is a really important question. If we're just taking it from an automated vehicle perspective, for example, there are about 20 million people in this country that drive for a living. If we took 20 million people out of any single industry in this country, it would be an economic calamity. We would be having blue ribbon panels try to figure out how the heck do we solve this problem because we just put a whole lot of people out of work and communities are collapsing. That's the type of bad outcome that could be a possibility if we allow AI and AVs to sort of run unchecked. So I think it's incumbent upon policy leaders and policy makers throughout this country to really take a look at the whole scale economic impact of this and how do we do it in a way that will not only make sure that we harness the best possible outcomes of this technological advancement, because I believe that those are there, but more so, how do we make sure that people, individuals, are lifted up in addition to the actual technology itself? We need to make sure that it's a tool, not a cudgel, so that we're actually empowering people to do their jobs in an effective way. And in the labor movement, I know it's not just me, but also I'm here in Minneapolis right now for the AFL-CIO National Convention. And AI is going to be a major topic of conversation here because we recognize this has the possibility to severely change the workplaces of our members of the 16 million people represented by unions across the country right now. So as we're going forward, as we're sort of designing, we need to set clearly what our expectations are. That this can't simply be a replacement technology, that it needs to be part of a broader economic planning agenda that incorporates the human interest in addition to the stuff that we're all dealing with. And I think it's an important and interesting challenge for us right now because, again, while this same challenge of a new advancement is not a new challenge for working people, the scale and the pace and the scope of what AI can do is completely unique. And it's something that is going to require nimble and proactive and long-term thinking from our policy leaders. And frankly, I think a lot of the people in this room or on this panel right here are doing that hard thinking, trying to figure out how are we going to do this the right way. It's not just about what we can do, it's what we should do. And so I look forward to this conversation. I look forward to working with all of my colleagues on this. And I do think there's a really positive outcome here, but we're going to have to fight for it because there's the history of technological advancement is littered with failures, not failures for profits, but failures for people. Thank you.
That was a terrific overview. Thank you so much, Greg. And boy, you were fast, very efficient. Next up, we've got IYAI Williams, and you're going to be talking about technology implication and impact. So why don't you take it away?
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. Hold on while I get set up here. 1 second.
And don't forget, you can sing to us right before
I could sing in the breaks. Thank you. Okay, so hi, everybody. My name is IYAI Williams. I'm Deputy Counsel at CAP Metro in Austin, Texas. And as you heard, most recently, a graduate of the 2026 APTA Emerging Leaders Program. Shout out to all my classmates. And so today I'm going to be talking about I'm bringing a legal perspective to writing the new playbooks and speaking specifically about labor law and technology changes in transit. Okay. So I hope, did the slide advance? Get a thumbs up. Okay, so in the 6 minutes I have, we're going to walk through a high level 4 topics. You should be seeing the agenda. And that is Section 13C and technology, what triggers an obligation to bargain for an employer, at what we're seeing as being negotiated trends with technology between the employer and the unions, and some sample provisions that tend to work. So let's start off with what is 13C. So really, it is a law. It's codified in the U.S. Code, and it's what makes transit labor law different. So it requires transit agencies that receive federal funding to protect workers, to preserve their bargaining rights, to prevent any worsening employment conditions, to provide training and retraining, and just to protect them from any displacement that could occur from, technology modernization, and anything else. And the Supreme Court has addressed 13C, and they've laid out exactly how it works. In short, in this case, Jackson Transit Authority, VATU, the Supreme Court held that 13C, it's a federal requirement, and disputes over the protections are enforced through state contract law. So these are real obligations, real binding contractual commitments that you make when you receive federal funding to protect workers' rights. It's not theoretical. So there is a general myth that labor law, historically, that labor law stops innovation or prevents a transit agency or whoever from, modernizing. But in 2001, in my studying of this topic, I found that the U.S. General Accounting Office did a study. They completed a study very long ago, but and they noted that 13C had minimal impact on an agency's ability to adopt new technologies. So instead, the better way to think about it is that 13C, it doesn't decide whether you adopt technology, but how you do it. It actually encourages collaborative planning from a technology implementation standpoint. But it's very important to understand the how to mitigate the risk, because that's where the legal risk exists when agencies are looking at transit technology changes. So generally, there are two types of decisions when transit agencies are looking at technology changes in the context of labor law. So those are the entrepreneurial decisions. This concept, and by the way, this concept applies across all industries, not just transit. So the entrepreneurial decisions is the decision to adopt, whether we're going to adopt technology. And management has a right to adopt a technology, whether you want to deploy AI scheduling software or add automated fares. There is no requirement that you need to bargain with the union for that decision. But decisions that affect employees, that if you implement the technology and the effect is job losses, schedule changes, training and privacy issues, then those are likely to be an impact or effect decision. And that is when the duty to bargain with the union would come into play. So basically, the agency chooses the technology tool they want to implement, and then the labor union, they work together with the management to decide how it's implemented safely and fairly. So some topics that are being negotiated by employers and their workforces include like notice requirements. How far in advance does the union need to be notified about a planned technology deployment? Or job impacts. How do you select which jobs will be eliminated or reclassified due to this new technology that you're implementing, or automation? You might even look at training for the new system that you're implementing, data and monitoring, and pay and scheduling changes, obviously. But the key thing to remember is that under 13C, one of the most important requirements is that you cannot worsen an employee's positions because of federally funded changes. So because of federal dollars and it's changing the wages and hours when you're implementing our job impacts, there may be grounds for workers to file a charge or complain and get into require bargaining. All right, next slide. Okay, so these are some sample clauses that potentially a transit agency and a union may talk about. Notice and collaboration. There might be a advance notice, 90-day notice before you deploy a new technology, or you can establish a labor management committee. We are very familiar with those in the transit world, especially from PTASC, safety requirements, where they review and assess and provide input on new technology rollouts. You can have provisions that relate to training and job protection, like labor has negotiated like binding commitments from management to fund training, so no worker is left behind. And also job privacy. So management and labor could negotiate how telematics and other data can be used in discipline. And these kinds of provisions are designed to reduce the disputes before they happen. And then slides 8 through 10 are just some real life technology related CBA provisions, which I sourced from the Department of Labor. They have an online public disclosure room, which is basically an online repository of collective bargaining agreements. And so I looked through and I pulled some clauses here that might be helpful. This first clause, it basically says that the employer will provide notice of major technological changes. And so when I read that, some things that came to mind, well, what is a major technological change? And who decides whether it's major? And this clause also provides that negotiation for effects, the effects of the technology, that negotiation will only occur if the technological change will result in a layoff or a reduction. So you're also defining when the bargaining takes place. So it's understood between the management and the union when they need to come to the table and talk about the effects. And this is a monitoring devices privacy clause. It's from a CBA with the American Postal Workers Union. This clause is interesting in that, oops, sorry, it allows the employer to put devices anywhere, to track anything they want, but it also requires the employer, if it's necessary for the operator's job, to give them reasonable training about it and to explain to them the intended use of the equipment, which I thought was very interesting. And another clause for monitoring devices. This is from a CBA between Green Mountain Transit Authority and Teamsters, which that says the employer provides video surveillance on its buses, and it says that video surveillance can only be used in disciplinary proceedings that result from a complaint or an accident. So not just you're randomly auditing, you would not be able to use that video for a disciplinary proceeding. So finally, some key takeaways, just know your obligations under 13C. Engage early with the union, separate the decision to adopt technology from the conversations about the impacts, but bring the workforce along. And I'll leave you with, I believe that the new playbook is going to be a collaborative document where agencies win on innovation and they use labor relations to write the rules together with their workforce. Thank you so much. And glad to be here today. Thank you for inviting me, Dr. Scott, and thank you, Karen, for your leadership.
And thank you so much. You had so many good comments, but I wanted to dig in on something I thought I heard you say.
Yeah.
Did you reference how telematics work in discipline?
Yeah, I did talk about potentially that could be an area for bargaining between labor and management, and when telematics can be used in discipline. And I showed a provision where the labor and management had decided that it would only be used, video could only be used where it was resulting from a complaint or there was an accident. And that's when management would be able to pull the video and confirm whether or not something, the complaint is true, substantiated or not. So it's interesting.
Thank you for that very much. And I'm sure that your fellow panelist, Greg Regan, will have some questions when we get into the moderated Q&A. But for now, let's move on to the big tech perspective. So Antonio Moss, will you please take it away and let us know what's happening with Microsoft and how you feel about this?
And hey, everyone. And just to make it short, title will be Senior Industry Strategist here at Microsoft, covering public sector transportation. And just one of the big thing I want to start with is we're not only in a huge technology transformation, but what we're seeing across the industry is that it's a huge workforce transformation where AI and technology is going to change how work is done and what skills matter and how people create value every single day on the job. And the ones that get it right in this next decade and this next era are going to be investing not only in just technology, but the people readiness itself. And so a few things I'm going to highlight in my time are upskilling, de-skilling, what is mission critical. So the first massive increase that we're seeing obviously is going to be training itself. So this is not only just an HR initiative, it's becoming part of your core infrastructure. You yourself and your organizations are going to have to upskill themselves because the skills that we have now are outdated. And they will no longer be needed in the next few years. And the ones that equip themselves now will close the gap faster than the ones that are not. So what we're going to be doing, what we're seeing is embedding learning directly into the workflow. Even my managers, and I see it across the industry, are requiring some upskilling throughout the week, making sure you block out an hour to 2 hours out of your week to invest in those skills, learning about the technology that's coming into your workflow on a day-to-day basis so you can become a master at it and employ it every single day. And making sure those skills also are going to tie directly back to your business outcomes. So learning itself is not going to be just an optional thing. It's not periodically. We're not going to have a training once every quarter or every semester. It's becoming part of the job itself. And I'll go ahead and address the elephant in the room since I'm the big tech guy when it comes to displacement. I know it's real. We hear it, but it's more nuanced than people think. The reality is, yes, there will be some people change. There will be displacement, but it's not as simple as just jobs are leaving or jobs are going away. You will see scope of changes where roles shrink. You'll see some roles evolve, and then you'll see entirely new roles emerge in this day and age. Most are not going to disappear. They're just going to get recomposed. So routine work, yes, that may get automated, but we're not removing the human from the loop. Humans will move towards more judgment and oversight and decision making. So this is less about job loss, but more about job redesign. And those skills are going to make that job redesign more fluential for you guys. Another shift is the capability model. So after we see a big shift in those skills, historically we valued execution and task efficiency and tool proficiency. And now that focus is shifting more towards decision making and problem framing and orchestrating those human and AI workflows. It's not about just doing work faster. It's about doing work fundamentally different. And that's where we're seeing the reskilling and upskilling coming. We're also seeing these organizations invest into AI. So AI is not only becoming, it's cool, it's shiny, and it's innovative. It's becoming tied to more outcomes. So it's becoming more safety modernization, more risk reduction, and operational reliability. We want to make sure we're framing this as we're improving our situational awareness, reducing incidents and improving safety, and supporting the frontline workers every single day. It's going away from this is a nice to have, and this is a nice shiny object that we have, to must-haves in our day-to-day workflow. And the last point I'm going to highlight and touch on is that transition planning. We see a huge gap in knowledge from employees that are going to be retiring in the next 5 to 10 years to the workforce that's coming in. A lot of these organizations are deploying tools and launching pilots, but there won't be somebody there to pass that knowledge down to the next organization. They're saying if your role changed, here's a pathway, but they're not really defining what that pathway looks like. And so with the implementation of AI from big tech, and what we're seeing is that we're gaining that knowledge and our data centers and our workflows, that we can pass that on to the upcoming generations that are going to be taking these opportunities as they continue to cycle out. In sectors like transportation, labor agreements and workforce are going to be protected, and that's critical. But it's making sure passing that knowledge down to the next generation. And as I wrap up, if I had to leave you guys with anything, the organizations and the people that win in this next AI era are not going to be just the ones with the best technology. It's going to be the ones that are most prepared from a people perspective. It's going to be the ones that are investing into their day-to-day skills and upskilling and learning what's out there and what's available for them. It's going to be the ones that take initiative and take charge and create innovative change that will help for the next decades and decades afterwards as this technology continues to grow. Technology and tech and these large companies, the Microsofts, the Googles, the NVIDIAs, the Facebooks of the world, we're not going anywhere. It's those that are implementing those technology and tools into their workflow that are going to be here for those next generations. And so that's what I have prepared. I'd love to answer some questions as the panel comes back up. And so I'll pass it back to you, Dr. Karen.
All right, Antonio, thank you. But before we move on, I think I just want to emphasize one point you made, and I have one question. Mm-hmm. Who wins in AI? The most prepared from the people perspective. Did I capture that correctly?
Yes, correct.
Love that. Okay, I'm going to use that. The second one is you talked about improving safety, but I'd love to hear some examples and some data points to help support that statement.
So in transportation specifically, being able to implement some here, and I'll use Atlanta as an example, being able to take a vision and use computer vision to capture our intersections as we're calculating near misses and identifying, how often those near misses happen, what time of the day that it's happening, and then using AI to kind of categorize and analyze what that is. Another example from a safety perspective, and I love computer vision, is being able to identify certain assets that are missing or certain assets that are there. We have drivers on the road that have dash cams. There's a cool organization that is out there that are capturing that dash cam footage and being able to identify, hey, on 285, we have a missing guardrail here. You might want to get back out there to fix that guardrail to prevent a lawsuit and further injury. Hey, there used to be a stop sign here. If you go on Google Maps, there's a stop sign there that was there just last year. The stop sign is missing. Now that's causing more accidents and more dangerous situations in that particular intersection. And so that's just two quick examples that I could give with using AI and that type of computer vision to reduce or improve safety for our agencies.
So love that. And as a psychologist, what it makes me think of is the reason Swiss cheese model of accident prevention, where if you have redundancies and different things in place and you report near misses or close calls, it creates a safer system. But sometimes the reporting of such danger can be problematic if people feel it might be used for punishment reasons. But Correct. We see quite clearly across industries that if people feel safe reporting hazards, it saves lives, it saves dollars, and it improves the system overall. In terms of the hotspots that you were just talking about, Antonio, did you have any data before you start from a before and after perspective? So I was thinking you use GIS or something to look at these hotspots where these near misses happened. Were you able to do an accident pre and post rate comparison?
Yes, using AI. And I would go back to, I started my career at the DOT. So this is near and dear to my heart with this particular use cases. Beforehand, again, you have pre-accident awareness and pre-accident studies done. A lot of times it's been done with, two people in a truck or two people sitting out there calculating data for particular hours or particular hotspots throughout the day. Incorporating some of that AI and that computer vision, now we're actually monitoring that 24/7, being able to monitor that on a continuous basis to also identify other hotspots. That's also helping not only reduce our safety, but it's also reducing budget hours for our organization. So now our DOTs and our organizations are saving money and preventing people to be out there all throughout the day. That's saving dollars. That dollars can be invested back into other organizations or other initiatives that the DOT or organization has for them.
Which it's so critically important to align decisions and dollars. And in the absence of data, we cannot do that effectively. So I love how you just amplified that. Thank you so much, Antonio. And I know we're going to get some great questions for you as well. Next up, we have Tiffany Gunter, and she'll be taking the perspective from big companies, and I hope we have her video. Wait, she's in a car. Is this
I'm not
safe?
moving.
Okay,
I'm not
you're
moving.
parked.
I parked. I've been anticipating and moving around. I was like, I don't know when Karen's going to call on me, but I'll be ready when she does. So I am parked and ready to talk. So thank you for having me. And I apologize.
Everybody heard that. She's parked, she's safe, she's so committed that she's in a mode of transportation while she delivers her remarks. Go for it, Tiffany.
I am in between meetings, and normally for a panel, I would not be in a car, but today we're a little, my calendar is a little too tight. What everyone said already, I've enjoyed the conversation so much about what's happening, because what I love about this is that we're all here in the same boat. We are doing the work of figuring this thing out so that we're not behind the 8 ball and we're not afterthought in the world of AI, trying to catch up and becoming obsolete in the process. What I want to be clear about is technology alone does not move people. People move people. Our drivers, our planners, our dispatchers, our advocacy community. That's the heart of the system. And I've heard something said, and I thought that it was so appropriate, that AI is not going to replace jobs, but the people who use AI are the people that will replace those jobs. And so to the comments that were made by Antonio just a moment ago, those resonated with me so deeply, because that's what I deal with on a day-to-day, of making sure that our operators know who I believe the heart of the system is. And while your job may fundamentally change, you still have a job here if you choose to upskill and if you choose to evolve and adapt along with us as we are learning what's next in this environment. And so I see AI, it's absolutely a tool. And just like any other tool, we've had innovations in the past that have seemed to feel like they were coming to take everybody's job and the sky was falling, and we've learned to adapt to them. And I honestly don't know how we would function without them, i.e. email. That was new at one point in time. So its value depends on basically the hands that wield it, and that value, we have to guide it as leadership. And it's here in Smart and in Metro Detroit. But we have a choice to make in that guiding, and we can watch other cities pull ahead of us, or we can lean in, invest in the infrastructure that's necessary, the partnerships and the workforce training to make that vision a reality. And what we're working on right now in Southeast Michigan is recognizing, yeah, there are limitations. We all know there's funding limitations, data analytics teams. If you're fortunate enough to have one, you still have to think about the skill set of the folks learning it as they're moving forward. So what we've been doing is working with our community colleges and our local universities to develop cohorts to share data back and forth so that they can start looking at our data, doing the analytics as they're learning them with a team of professors who understand this world that I at Smart don't have to pay for because I can't afford them. They're too pricey for me, but what they love is the research and development side of things. And so what we're doing with them is, as we know, every bus is outfitted with several cameras on the inside and the outside. They want that information. We have an 18-hour-a-day operation, 7 days a week, and we don't take that data and use it for facial recognition or pattern assessment, or using it for predictive modeling so that we can know what's going on certain routes at certain times. We have cohorts of students that want to do this, love to do this, and know how to do this. And so we're developing a program as we speak to be able to do that data exchange. A lot of times in the past, and I've worked in the public transit industry now for almost 22 years, we didn't want to share information with others because of some fear that it would be used for harm. And really, we're a public agency. Our data, there's some data I won't share, obviously not HR, and some financial information that needs to remain in-house unless it's requested through sunshine laws. But other than that, we should be able to create an environment where we can have this play and this testing so that we can think about the future, think about the things that others haven't done yet, and figure out how we can best serve our constituencies by looking at the data and understanding their behavior. The other side of it that I'm most excited about, not just on the vehicle side and looking at use and the ridership, but also for maintenance. We have been, I say it tongue in cheek, on the struggle bus a bit here with respect to vehicles at Smart. And I know I'm not alone with this, and with some of my own colleagues, is that how you maintain vehicles. Something happened during the pandemic, and I'm not sure if this applies to others, but I'll tell on myself before others tell on me, is that we went to Sunday schedules. We had more buses than we knew what to do with, so we lost our discipline as a maintenance team. And that's no shade to my maintenance guys. It's just the fact that when you have more than you need, your processes tend to fall off, your procedures, the good work that you have to do when you are on that tight schedule, when you've got to turn those buses for PM peak turnaround, you don't have to do that anymore. So some things languished. And we are actively working now to turn those processes back on as we are turning on new services. We're growing it smart for the first time. And this is going to sound wild to a lot of people. In 2022, we turned on a new route for the first time since the 90s. That floored me, y'all. We have to be forward thinking. We have to evolve. And when I learned that, because I've been smart now since 2022, we started a program. I said, let's look at the whole system. Post-pandemic, our travel patterns completely changed everywhere in the world. And so we need to think about how we're delivering service. Our model matters. And we worked on what was called smarter mobility. Smarter mobility was, what routes are underperforming, not working, and where is the propensity for transit use? So we did that the manual way. We had some AI tools that supported, but as we're looking at what we need for vehicles to support the plan that we now know that we need, we're using and looking at predictive modeling through AI on our maintenance so that we can ensure that we have the vehicles available for service when we need them. And as we plan for them, what's coming online, what's going off, where are we with respect to maintenance and mileage and retirement of vehicles, all of those things. Y'all, I tell you, a leaf just slid down the front windshield and scared me because I thought it was a bug in the car and I lost my next thought. So I apologize. I am afraid of bugs.
No problem.
But with that, I would say I'm excited about the partnerships with our local community colleges and universities on how we take this new tool that we're all learning and testing and playing in this environment and become thought leaders. We become our own disruptors so that others don't have to disrupt us, and that we move forward in a way that makes our employees know that they are valued, that they are safe with us if they continue to upskill and choose to evolve. And they also know that if that's not in them and that's not their choice to evolve, that they may need to consider other things, but we will do so gently. That's sort of the spiel I have. I don't know if I filled up my time here, but I am open to any questions you have, if you have them.
I loved it. First of all, you've got a lot of energy and it shows through even the steering wheel. So thank you for joining us. And you
You're welcome.
bring a unique perspective, quite honestly, as a CEO of the group. And what you've talked about is so exciting. And I love that you said tech does not move people, people move people. And you're talking about AI as a tool, a technology, all of the wonderful positives. Love that you're engaging your community colleges and academics to help move this forward. But my question for you is, how do your newer people adjust versus your more seasoned professionals who how are they adjusting in different ways to the implementation of artificial intelligence? Have you seen a dichotomy?
That is a fantastic question. And I'll tell you,
It
really is. You knocked it out of the park. So the younger people come into the organization expecting it to be here. And when they don't see it, when they see those antiquated processes, they get frustrated. Sometimes I lose them because they want to be in a place that is technologically advanced, right? Because that's what they came up in. Their education, their schooling has been far more advanced than what they're seeing inside of those terminals. On the more seasoned side, what I'm seeing is there is a resistance to change. But what I found is my secret sauce. There's people moving all around me. I'm so sorry for the distraction, but my secret sauce has been that being present in the garages at least once a week so that you can have the conversation with them. You can explain to them what it is. I'll give you one case in point where I have the young folks' attention and I have the seasoned folks' attention, is that for our operators, there's technology that we've never introduced that can show them. We're all into on-time performance. We have a whole campaign moving forward, but they want to do well. They all believe they were doing well because no one was telling them that our on-time performance was failing. And so when we started to show that to them, they said, what else can we do? So we started showing them, hey, basically the system they're on is like MapQuest. tells you where you just went from, but really doesn't tell you what's ahead of you. This system shows you that. We're introducing it to the operators before we install it to get their feedback. Where do you want it positioned in the vehicle? Where can you best see it? So what I'm seeing is happening is the generational issues that we face when we try to introduce. Oh, hang this when
Okay.
to engage. You can't hear me? Uh-oh.
Wait, we can
I
hear you
had it.
now. We got
Okay,
you
I had
now.
it caught again. They start the generational issues that we have, they start to melt away with communication.
Yes.
When you talk to them and you help them understand where we're headed or what the change is and why, those issues kind of melt away. You get the resistance on both sides, but it melts away when you start to have the conversation.
Well, really, what I want to underscore as a takeaway message from your really comprehensive comments is the power of communication, the power of listening, and the power of social modeling, and the power of making sure that everybody feels a part of the change and that they understand it. That's how you keep people working cohesively as a successful team. Madam CEO, fantastic comments. I've got a lot more to say, but it's Paul Tolliver's turn. So please, if you can, stay with us, stay safe, and
I
join
will.
us in a few minutes for questions and answers. Thank you. Hey,
Thank,
Paul
thank you
Tolliver.
so much.
Hey, thank you.
Take it away, my APTA Hall of Famer. What have you got?
Well, I enjoy listening to my colleagues, very hopeful and very positive. And I guess there's a role for the person who speaks from the opposite side of the aisle that is very skeptical and somewhat fearful, but the comments made by every one of my colleagues give me hope that what I'm going to say is not necessarily the happening are going to be our new reality. So just to talk a little bit about AI, what is AI? I'm going to talk a little bit about ethics. I'm going to talk a little bit about privacy. So a little history on AI, just as I did my research, I actually got to talk about this some time ago, but AI started in the 50s, even though people were dreaming about it earlier than the 50s. But there was a conference at Dartmouth University on artificial intelligence, and that's where the term was coined. Now, the reason that conference, and I'm going to quote why it was done, and it was done to proceed on the conjecture that every aspect of learning or any feature of intelligence can principle be so precisely described that a machine can be made to simulate it. So, in other words, let's build these machines that can do everything a human can do. And the four critical players at that conference were a gentleman named John McCarthy, Marvin Minsky, Nathaniel Rochester, and Claude Shannon. And those of you familiar with AR platforms know the name of Claude. Yes, that is the Claude. Now, the goal that they were going into this meeting about was definitely they wanted machines that could think and learn like we do, essentially to copy human intelligence and handling of tasks that only people to that point were able to do. So that is what they started to do, into the conference to create. So to make things more faster, more accurate, and more productive. So all of that led to where we are today, producing millions of investments going into AI and developing more and more of these platforms and models and software. Now, however, I have not seen any evidence that they're spending anywhere near like that going into what we're going to do with all the people whose jobs get disrupted. Yeah, I heard my colleagues talking about we need training, we should involve with training, but I haven't seen that as yet in terms of the people who are creating and investing in AI. What are they doing for those who will ultimately be the place? So I can see that it's more likely that it's going to fall on us, the public sector, the government sector, in terms of setting some ground rules and what we do in terms of making sure that those who are displaced and disrupted, what we do with them. So that leads us to our, I call the basic ethical question, which is now, see if I phrase this correctly, if machines and software intentionally push people out of work, do we as a society owe them anything? Do we owe them anything at all? Like retraining, do we owe people pay or long-term support? That's the ethical question. Now, historically, what have we done? We have unemployment benefits, usually short-term, and there hasn't been any strong sense that I've seen any moral obligation to change that. But let's hope, and with the comments today from my leaders, my colleagues on this panel, I think that's shifting a little bit. I see a growing movement and a real conversation happening concerning the big picture of ethics, like in articles, interviews, and even proposed laws in certain state legislatures dealing with AI and how we deal with it. Antonio's boss, I read Bill Gates' latest, former boss, Antonio, I'm sorry, his latest letters and comments, his annual letter. He speaks to AI. The Maryland Governor Wes Moore, in his State of the State address, spoke directly to the impacts of AI on certain populations groups and how that will impact them if something positive is not done. And just recently, 4 days ago, that it reaches kind of this level of thought. Pope Leo XIV spoke to AI in his first encyclical letter called, listen to this, Magnifica Humanitas of His Holiness Pope Leo XIV on safeguarding the human person in the time of artificial intelligence. Yeah, not everybody has read all the stuff that I'm reading, but when leaders like this speak up, it kind of gives me hope because they will ultimately shape public opinion and, yes, Greg, ultimately policy. So maybe there is hope on the horizon in terms of the role of ethics in AI as we go forward, because we're not stopping, we're not coming back. So we have to make sure that the role of ethics is strong as we move forward. Switching a little bit to privacy, the topic of privacy. Every state in the union right now is working on laws to protect our basic privacy rights and to give people more control over their personal data. No question about it. Personal info. But here's the thing right now, even though laws exist, it doesn't mean that that's the answer. And you know that, and I know that. Legislation alone doesn't protect you. So what do? Yeah, we just can't rely on government. So totally. Matter of fact, a lot of people, including myself, kind of nervous about certain governments' overreach, especially in today's era. And honestly, I think that's a fair concern. So that means, I think, the real responsibility for protecting your privacy falls on you, on me, and all of us as individuals. So given that, we now have, which is the good news, a lot of tools to do that, as well as making sure and that we don't go it alone, and we're not going to go it alone. That's also the positive. It means working together, like Tiffany said. It means sharing the work, building safeguards, pushing for smart legislation, which a lot of people are now understanding we must do that. And critically, from my point of view, we got to hold people accountable when they deliberately break the laws in terms of how they deal with information and privacy issues. And ultimately, one of the more powerful tools that we all have in our pockets, and that is called our own wallets. In one way or the other, we can always choose not to buy, not to support those products that violate our privacy. And I think you're seeing that on a bigger picture when one of the major IYAI companies refused to allow the government, the US government, to use their product and their data as a tool to collect more information on US citizens. So that's an example of the types of things that have to be done to make sure our ultimate privacy is protected as we move forward in this new world of AI. So basically, as I wrap up, this is what I believe. If we're not careful, if we let this technology run wild without oversight, without monitoring, without any real management, the promise that it gave us of a better quality of life will only happen for a select few, while the rest of us are left behind. I think I heard Greg say that as well. If we don't get on top of it, only a select few will benefit while the rest of us are left behind. So we as human beings, we've got to stay aware, we got to stay engaged, and we got to step in before we end up somewhere none of us want to go. I appreciate all the positive comments, and I'm glad that my colleagues are moving in those directions. So I feel a lot more comfortable. But in the end, we have to all stay awake and make sure that we do move on the right track. So thanks for listening to me.
You're exactly right, Paul. You made so many good points. And before I launch into the moderated Q&A, I just wanted to follow up on something. It felt like you took us through a journey somewhat and how this has developed, going back to the 1950s and giving different comments. I'm thinking about what you said about individual responsibility, and I'm also thinking about the age of people that we have that are experiencing the advent of artificial intelligence and the rates at which user acceptance may differ among the generations. Any feedback on that?
The answer is yes. My generation, the end of the baby boomers and the Gen X's and the Gen Y's, a lot of folks who didn't grow up with severe technology or definitely didn't grow up with AI, probably are more skeptical and preaching taking more responsibility, but see the advent of losing those things that we always did as humans and fearful, as opposed to those who grew up with it, not knowing what the world was like without it. Mm-hmm. So given the fact that people, I guess, grow up in this age where they never saw a time when people were, I guess, free without technology, I'm hoping that we as a society understand that we have to make sure all of those people, and just not a select few of them, are aware of the role of technology in terms of those jobs. I think Bill Gates's letter, for those of you who want to really look at that, his last letter, he talked about the types of jobs that will be around afterwards. So I'm saying that the younger people only have seen a world with technology. And I'm hoping that they are preparing themselves to go into those jobs.
Oh, yes.
Where technology would embrace them. Because there could also, on the other hand, we could have a lot more people who are disenfranchised than we are seeing today. And I'm just hoping that our systems help us, our political systems help us understand the role for education, for training, and for supporting all of us, and not just a handful who actually, the top 10% of us who understand the role and are educated to move forward. So I don't know, it's a long, complicated answer, but yes, there are those who grow up, the generations, there are differences. Yeah.
There are differences. And the fact of the matter is, whether you're 85 or you're 8, you're using AI in your life. You just may not call it that or realize that. In fact, I want to make, from the academic perspective, 2 very quick comments. The first is, in academia now, if you do not use AI as a resource to assist you in developing an overall framework, or in some capacity, some people might view you as not using all of the available resources. And so one of the keys becomes documentation, really being very clear about how AI was used, the intentionality of it, and that you proofed it to make sure it was accurately capturing what you wanted. But we're using it all the time, Paul. Absolutely. So thank you for that.
Yeah. One of the things I did, just sure to take more time, I deliberately put something out there that was not necessarily true. It came back from AI that this is in case who Paul Tolliver is. So we have to find ways to make sure that AI knows what is true and what is not true. So
that can be scary. For
Yeah.
all of the panelists, will you please turn your cameras back on for our joint Q&A period, including Tiffany if she's still in her car. Well, thank you all for sharing those background details. Clearly, this is a conversation that needs more time. It's incredibly robust. We need to help people understand how the use of AI can improve people's lives without displacing workers and help make things safer. So I want to come first to you, Aola, if I might, with a question. Our emerging leader, our singer, and our attorney.
Yes.
Okay, here you go. You ready?
Yes, I am.
Okay, as transit agencies do adopt these new technologies, how do you think they should navigate the line between management decisions that are now not subject to bargaining and the workforce impacts that do trigger a legal duty to bargain? That's a pretty thorny question.
That is a thorny question. And I guess, my first recommendation as a lawyer would be get with your legal counsel, look at your collective bargaining agreements, um, laws that apply to you. And once you look at those, you need to, I would encourage employers to separate out the decision to adopt the technology from the conversation about the impacts, but understand both of them, and what technology you choose and what the impacts they're going to have. But when you're choosing technology, you're coming from a business framework, and remembering to bring the employees in at some point, and knowing when to bring the employees in. So that is really the fine line that I think that labor and management will need to sort out. And some of those lines that we've been seeing, the trend is literally to define when management is going to meet with labor to talk about those decisions and those effects, right? So it's good to just separate out those decisions in your mind and have different reasons for why you're doing both, although they are interconnected. And then having a plan and a transition plan for deploying that technology that clearly includes labor in it. And I believe that, I guess for Paul, my positivity, I believe that the legal framework is there, that to help employers and their workforces tackle these new developments in technology. Like Greg was saying, this is not new. This has happened many times. Technology has changed in our lifetime, or maybe, some of our lifetime. And even in my lifetime, absolutely. When I just look at the computer, and those change, how it's changed so much, from dialing in, listening. I mean, it's completely different from even when I was a child. And so we've done it before, and these laws have been in place for time. And I believe they do create a framework, but really you need leaders from the union side and from the management side who there are clear definitions for when you get together and when you talk about these impacts and how technology is impacting the workforce.
Thank you for that.
Bev,
Bev, I
it's
did.
fuzzy, but yes.
Before I get to the question that was dropped into chat, Greg, I just wanted to see, are you joining us from a hotel room by any chance?
I am, yes.
Bev, people love you. We've got people in cars, hotel rooms. We all wanted to be here. Greg, what do you think about what she just shared with us?
So I would agree. I think in public transit, there's a legal framework that exists through 13C, which is exactly
Correct.
what you were pointing out. That does not exist in other aspects of transportation, let alone the broader economic impact that we're having here. And that's why I do think, and this is something the labor movement's been very, very consistent about here, is there needs to be a federal framework, a federal policy framework that establishes guardrails about the appropriate and inappropriate ways to deploy this technology, regardless of the industry that's there.
Yes.
That's what we've been pushing for on AV side, and I think we got a little bit closer to that recently under the Surface Reauthorization Act. but there's still a lot more to work out. And I think AI provides a much different challenge because we're not dealing with any one particular federal agency. We're dealing with a whole host. I mean, this is going through every single aspect of our economy. So we have to be able to show leadership, and that's why I keep going to policy discussions because even if and AI is a little bit different because it's already here. It's in, every time I open up a damn app on my phone, I have to, click out of some AI bot they have in there, which drives me insane, but it's already here. The fact is, though, and I've talked with a number of Antonio's colleagues about this at Microsoft, and I've spoken with some very senior people and their ideas for how it can be productive and helpful, and they agree. Many of the developers, at least the developers who are viewing this responsibly, like I think Microsoft is, agree with the need for federal guardrails, that there need to be policy guardrails. The problem that we run into, and this is where the problem with a lot of my colleagues have, is that at the end of the day, the vast majority of the AI products that Microsoft or other companies are doing, that is a product they're selling to somebody else. And those somebody else are our employers in most cases. And there may be cases where you have responsible actors who are willing to take this and view it as a tool and view it as a way to help create opportunity for individuals, not downsize jobs or undercut existing collective bargaining agreements. But I can point to a whole number of examples, including in the rail industry, where I don't trust them to use it responsibly whatsoever. Because every single other time they've had technology, some new technology that's come in, they've used it as a cudgel, a way to eliminate headcount, to cut corners, to make more money. And so that's where I think there is, 13C. I wish we could have 13C type of policy in every industry. That's just not the case. That's been something that's long fought after and long protected by labor and management. But if we're starting to think bigger and thinking outside of the box here, and I think about mature agencies, including rail, where there's going to have to be a lot more handholding and a lot more strict policy guidance about what is appropriate, what is inappropriate for how this can be deployed in our workplaces. And that includes from a safety perspective and from an economic planning perspective.
Mhm. Greg, I've got one follow-up to what you've just said. I've had the privilege of seeing you speak on this topic in different settings, whether it's an academic safety conference or a more public venue. And what I see that really separates or distinguishes you from some of the other union leaders is that you know it's here, you're open to it, and you're working, it appears, collectively to make sure the workers are protected while we are welcoming new technology into the workplace. How do you deal with any pushback you might get from your union members or the presidents of other arms of the union?
Well, one thing I say a lot, and I've said this many, many times over, is when you hear that pushback, whether it be from union leaders or from rank and file members, that is an earned skepticism. And it's
Yes.
not, and I say it's well earned because we have seen versions of this many times over. In just the public transit world, for example, where you see things like electric bus, the transition to green, lower, no emission vehicles. There have been examples, and this goes back ways because I think, frankly, we've made the policy a little bit stronger. But there was a time when an agency would buy a new fleet of lower no emission buses, and then they would use that as an opportunity to also make sure that contract the maintenance with the company the manufacturer who is making the buses. And what that does, more often than not, those maintenance workers who are doing a 10-year warranty or whatever, or the lifetime of the bus, are not union workforce. It's undermining the jobs of the existing people who are doing it. So instead of training people up to do the maintenance on a new vehicle, they're just saying, well, they already have the knowledge, and then there goes a huge portion of your workforce that are just gutted. And that is a bad outcome for those workers, even with a good investment, which I think is a good investment of green vehicles. So when you have that sort of earned skepticism and you have this very disruptive type of technology, you have to acknowledge those fears. And I think the openness and the building of trust, you need to be demonstrative about how we're actually going to be incorporating it and how it's going to affect their jobs and what the opportunities are and what the potential downsides are. It's going to take some time to build some trust there. But the more that I point out to people that in the history of our, since the Industrial Revolution, there have been plenty of examples of union leaders trying to block some new technology because they see it's going to gut their workforce. I mean, Walter Reuther and UAW with the manufacturing of their or the automation of their manufacturing plants. He wanted to stop it. Guess what? That's not possible. At a certain point, it saturates the market and becomes undeniable. So
Yeah.
before we get there, that's where it's incumbent upon us to start figuring out when it saturates the market, when it is undeniable, that we've planned for it, we've prepared for it, and we've created the framework that allow people to grow and workers to benefit from it as much as the CEOs are selling it.
Excellent. Bev, would you like to say something? Please, you have a wealth of knowledge. What do you think? You're on mute. Just a
The
minute.
other thing, I'm so enjoying this because I'm on the end with Paul. It's like 50 years, seen a lot and all that. But the pieces that come through so unerringly, okay, are communications, trust, and all that. Now I'm gonna give an example. Iola, you are exactly right. Everything you said. They are two separate decisions. But I put in the chat, let me talk about how is it really possible for let me just say siloed. I can make this decision and it is my decision and it is. But I'm going to suggest after 9 transit systems and 4 times running them, okay, that it would behoove you to have an environment where one of the most critical sets of voices in that technology decision are the workers and the people on the front line who are working it. Example, when I walked in as a young woman to Houston Metro in 1977, we had 151 RTSO2s. I was a Grumman and 367 Grumman Flexibles, okay? The aerodynamic buses. I'm going to cut to the chase. All of them broke down. Every one, I can see those old mechanics, Tip Weaver, they are, God bless them, rest in peace now, that they took me as a young woman to learn about what the heck a monocoxic and all that. They took me on that shop floor and every single one of them said that if they had only asked us, we saw them and we knew exactly what was going to wind up happening. And they did. Okay. And so I give that as just, and that was early, and it's been the same also. I come back to the points that I'm like Paul, I'm so overjoyed so I want to ask us as an industry to actually not reform because we're doing a lot of it, but let's be exceptional. That means that everybody's in the room. We're having these conversations, understanding I know what my role is. And in the end, I will make that decision. But let's make those decisions in as an informed way and build a different kind of culture that gets rid of all this old them and us and always be thinking from day one, it's we. The other thing I'm going to say, I shut up, old time. I heard this coming up. We have a responsibility, old indigenous, to think 7 generations ahead. So that the decisions that we're making today, we won't have all the answers, but at least if we come at this, because that's what this is, and think, okay, when this happened, what about 20 years from now? What about, and so I'll shut up. And so if we can kind of start bringing some of that kind of thing into just kind of our personal way in terms of how we think of leadership from a personal and an organizational standpoint, I honestly believe that we have the potential to be able to recognize all the good parts of it, but at the same time, really leave no one behind, okay, in no community. So anyway, that's my little piece, and I'll be quiet.
No, we love you contributing because to your point, you have been with 9 transit agencies, CEO of 4 of them, and you have a PhD. Lady, you've got a lot of knowledge to contribute here, so it's great to have your voice also.
No.
Yes. Oh, I saw a hand. Hold on. Paul.
Yeah, I want to quickly, I think Greg will smile with this, and Tiffany, I don't think she's with us, but I've had the opportunity, Beverly, Dr. Scott mentioned 50 years. I didn't realize that, Dr. Scott.
I was 50, I know.
Yeah, I've opportunity to introduce new technologies along the way. And my career has been in a number of systems, but large urban systems, Greg. I've worked in some of the hardest going, but I remember introducing automatic vehicle locations, AVL, when I worked at San Francisco Muni. I don't mean to name names, but it was the Transport Workers Union, by the way. Uh, Over half those units we put in became sabotaged. Sabotaged.
Yeah.
Why? Because we did not talk to those men and women who ultimately had to use them. They had their own
Absolutely.
reasons for doing that. I saw a question in the chat asking about change without including change doesn't happen.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen.
Mhm.
You ultimately are forced to go back and include. Why not do it up front? I introduced in Seattle, I ran articulated trolley buses and we ran some new technology there. We ended up shelving the whole fleet because my operators uh, didn't work with the brakes because they hadn't been trained on these new brakes, these new style brakes that we had implemented, which we didn't even know. If we had a talk with them ahead of time, we would have avoided that. Change will not happen. We think it will happen, but ultimately does not happen
It
without
doesn't.
the involvement of those men and women who ultimately will have to use what is being changed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. I want to
Learn the
say,
hard way.
yeah, I
Yeah.
completely agree. And especially not only with technology changes, policy changes, anything. Like, for example, Cap Metro, we implemented a code of conduct. You can't just do that without having the operators and everybody on board who is
Right.
public facing. So it involved a lot of training and understanding their role in implementing that new code of conduct.
Yeah.
So I believe that that extends to any kind of action that the employer puts. And you're right, you cannot make the change. It doesn't happen without the
Yeah.
workforce included,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
and generally when I'm saying, so maybe another way to look at it is there's the entrepreneurial change, and a part of that, a big part of it
Yeah.
involves the workers, you know?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I do want to say that's clear. Yes, Greg's totally right. 13C is great, very confusing as well. Sometimes understanding the interplay with state law and et cetera. But yeah, it would be great if it was everywhere we had that kind of, hey, before employer does this, how they engage.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Rules of
See how
engagement.
that works. But
Right.
yes, it makes it 13C makes it easy. And those arrangements make it easy because it's like a contract and you know what you have to do before you
Yeah.
can make
Yeah.
that
So,
Yeah.
mandatory
Greg,
decision.
we've heard from the doctor, the attorney, and the Hall of Famer about this. Talk to us from the labor perspective.
Mhm.
What would be the best way of making sure every voice has an opportunity to contribute?
Yeah, well, I think well look, and we're fortunately in public transit, and I would say transportation broadly, we are in a we're a little bit a step ahead of a lot of other areas of the country in terms of how do we do this equitably, in
Mhm.
large part because we have probably the highest union density in the transportation sector than in any other sector in the U.S. economy. So if you're going to try to make a change in a public transit agency, odds are you have to do it in the context of a collective bargaining agreement. That would be true in basically every airline, every freight and passenger rail and commuter rail and all that stuff. So there is a strong, mature collective bargaining relationship there that gives the union and the workers a little bit more power and more voice in terms of how this stuff is introduced into their workplaces.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
so I do think what Paul said is really helpful. I mean, you're not going to get there if you just say, here is the new reality.
That's
You know,
right.
these are the
Yeah.
people who you rely on. They're the ones who are the eyes and the ears on the ground. They're the ones who are doing the work. They're moving the people. They are working on the engines, all of those things, dispatching the buses. Uh, I was thinking about this recently. I've become very reliant on a Microsoft version of the, like the Windows sort of PC model of a laptop. I had to use my wife's Apple laptop
Oh,
recently. I didn't know which way was up.
no.
And
Yes.
and I'm talking about just being able to use email, let alone using you know, operating on a very complex bus that needs to move 60 to 80 people every single day, or thousands of people in every trip. So so I think there needs to be that open and that viewing of the workers of your workforce as a partner in this, because ultimately the thing that I've been doing this for 15 years in the labor movement, And where I've seen some of the most frustrating moments in my career have been where we are in a pitched battle against our employer, whether it be on policy, whether it be on bargaining, whether it be on
Yeah.
organizing. When we're fighting ourselves, usually we have missed opportunities as an industry. That's true in aviation and rail and transit across the board.
Mhm.
When we are
Mhm.
able to work together and we're not always going to agree. There's always going to be 5 to 10% where labor and
Right.
management are going to be apart. But if we can identify that 90% and work together on that, it makes that 10% a lot easier to negotiate over, a lot easier to bridge the divide. And it allows us to capitalize on opportunity. When you look at, for example, the low and no bus program out of the IIJA, one of the really important provisions of that was a requirement in the law that 5% of every contract awarded out of that program had to go towards workforce training and development.
Yes.
And that meant that we were not only using this to invest in communities and invest in systems, we were using it to invest in people. Not just stuff, but people. And by the way, you can have the fanciest buses and the best train systems in the world, but if you don't have people that are fully trained and ready to do it, it's not going
Mhm.
anywhere.
Nothing.
So
Mhm.
so I do think that the dialogue is open. I think the best areas are when we were able to work together and identify and share priorities. Um, Unfortunately, to the previous, you know, and one of my colleagues, someone who runs an organization that many of us are familiar with ITLC, made this point at a conference on AI recently, where he said, "I hear all these people talking about, oh, we want to be the high road employers, we want to lift people up, we want to provide ladders of opportunity and training, but practically, we haven't seen any of those lift off the ground. We have not seen that model really implemented in a meaningful way. I want to be able to show the good options, the good examples, how this can be done properly, and contrast that with the negative
Absolutely.
outcomes. But we have to see a lot more progress in these industries, and before I can start saying that all those words mean something, to be honest with you,
Yeah.
because until we see it in practice, they're just words.
And
Right.
this is exactly why, Dr. Bev, if I may speak for you, you founded
Yep.
this entire series on candid conversations. I think right there, you
Absolutely.
should just drop the mic. That perfectly encompassed why we're here doing this. And
Exactly.
Antonio, it doesn't escape my notice that you've been relatively quiet during our moderated Q&A.
I
So
have.
open-ended opportunity to contribute to what you've
No,
heard.
we've had so many good leaders and so many good speakers, and I'm speaking from, I guess, the other side of the wheel as working in the private sector and for-profit companies. And we talked about inclusive and including the entire workforce. And from you guys' perspective, what role would you love to see these for-profit and these technology companies play in including that workforce? Because we're going to always be innovating. We're always going to be coming up with the newest and the best and product and always trying to implement something new. What role do we play into gathering that workforce inclusivity? And then who are we responsible, or who are we leaning in towards? Because most times we're speaking with our C-suite executives, or our vice presidents, or our executive leaders. We're never actually getting the opportunity to speak to those frontline workers. So I would just love to take a second to hear from Greg and Paul and Dr. Scott. What would you like to see from us on the
Well,
private side?
I do want to give you all at Microsoft credit, because I think you're taking a lot of the steps that are important first steps towards getting that type of engagement. I've had the pleasure of meeting with your president now 3 or 4 times, and I've participated in some panels that included Liz Schuler, the president of the AFL-CIO, and other unions, and the president of Microsoft. And those conversations have led to a number of actual formal relationships between labor organizations and Microsoft, including the AFL-CIO and the Tech Institute, including the American Federation of Teachers, including the
Right.
National Building Trades Federation. They've created these formal partnerships that also have financial relationships, where you're talking about how do you develop a really good training strategy for teachers, or how do you develop a better hiring model when it comes to building trades projects? Because in those cases, if you're a carpenter, or if you're a mason, or whatever it is, you hire on the job. That's when you get paid on each job, and there's a whole hiring hall process, a whole different thing. So how do you partner to make that more effective in getting people work? So there are opportunities there. The next step for me is, how do we partner on policies that will ensure that your customers,
Absolutely.
the ones who don't view the world the way that we do and the way that Brad Smith does, how do we make sure that they don't take your good intentions, your good product, and end up using it to do exactly what you're saying you don't want to do? And that's how we have to get to the next step there. And that's where I think policy,
Right.
and I'm biased because I'm a policy person, but that's where policy can play a really important role.
Right.
And frankly, having a voice like Microsoft, one of the most powerful, richest companies in the world, standing shoulder to shoulder with labor unions saying this is the right way to do it, that gets us
Thank you.
a whole lot farther.
Yes.
That's it. I'm just gonna say amen. Okay, and I'm saying I know when Antonio, when we reached out to say Antonio said, look, we're not considering you the booger bear at the table, okay, because of Microsofts and stuff of the world. So don't think this is but when we stand together, and I think that this is an exceptional opportunity for public transportation, for the transportation sector to be a national leader. Okay, and I'm saying that we've got it. And Iola, it's not, you were so right. This is what the rules are, but then it's how you knit. Okay, and I'm saying, so we're talking about things that are principles. So to Microsoft, when the Microsofts are standing with your CEOs are standing with our CEOs, and we're saying, here are the 10 tenets. This is how you do it. Okay, bam, bam, bam. And then that also gets inculcated in policy and stuff like that. Very different conversation. Very different conversation. Of course, I think of not doing this and not including the people from the beginning. When you're starting to get that kind of stuff going, it makes a big difference. It makes a big difference. So
it's shocking, absolutely shocking that people wouldn't include the front line in the beginning, and it speaks to the culture of an organization as well. Now, I know we only, in 1 minute, Bev, I'm going to kick it back to you because
yes, ma'am.
we're going to talk about the survey, but I see a potential informational session here between Antonio and Greg and all of us about how we can work more cohesively together for a better outcome. But I jotted down some takeaways during our time together, and I just want to end with a little takeaway from everyone. Iola, I want to end with your myth buster. Labor law prevents modernization. That is a myth. Get that out of your head. Did I say that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Sing it from the mountaintops.
Paul, individual responsibility matters. That's what I took away from many of your comments. We play a role in this as a person within the United States. We have an individual responsibility.
Yeah.
Antonio, this is my new quote. Who wins in AI? The most prepared from the people perspective. My main takeaway from your comments. Greg, I love your earned skepticism. That was one of your comments, but I love how you're always so positive at the end and willing to come to the table and talk openly about these issues so that everybody is protected and we can move forward together. And then finally, Tiffany, though she's not with us now, really impressed upon me the power of showing up, the power of listening, and the power of socially modeling the behavior you wish to be emulated. Thank you so much to all of our panelists for providing such great perspectives. I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. It's been a privilege. And Bev, I'll shoot it back to you with one last question.
Okay, not even the last question. I'm just going to make a comment that we are launching right after. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Somebody wants to know if you will be making this video available following the webinar.
Yes, I will. We will. Okay. So give us about 48 hours. You'll be able to go on the IYAI website, www.iyaa.org, and it'll be on our YouTube too, please. And now, do you want me to go into the other part now, which is a national? And we wouldn't leave you all without some homework to do. Okay. So we are launching, to our knowledge, the first national survey on this, right? And we need your voice. We are on Survey Monkey. We're going to keep it up for 60 days. We're going to come up. We want you to put it through your networks. Our youth, the intention of this, it's open to everybody, but we really want to hear from transportation, infrastructure sectors, the people that are out there doing this, okay? And it's got a lot, it's going to take you about 15 minutes, maybe 20 on the most, but please answer. And we intend to have all the top side stuff out in September. Okay. And so we need your input, and I just can't thank everybody enough. And this really is an opportunity for us to lead. Okay. And I'm saying we are best in class.
Absolutely. Would any of our panelists in our last 1 minute like to leave people who joined us with a last thought? Paul?
I just thank you. It was a privilege to be on this panel with such distinguished panel members, as well as Dr. Philbrick and Dr. Scott. Thank you for the opportunity.
You bet.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And for anybody out there in the audience that is on the management side, don't be afraid of, we don't bite, don't be afraid to come engage with your labor partners, with the labor movement. The thing I always try to impart upon people is we have no interest in killing business.
That's
We want
right.
our employers to thrive. We want them to grow. We want them to expand. We want to have these systems working the best way possible. So
Beautiful.
when we raise concerns about behavior, it's not with any interest in killing these industries. It's because we care about it. These are our homes and we want to grow. So help us help you on a lot of those things.
Wonderful. Thanks again. We're right at the end. So have a
That's
great
it.
day, everybody.
Thank
Karen,
you.
thank you, and all the panelists, and for those who are able to join us, thank you so, so much. This is just part one. We're coming with part two. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
See you later.
Then
All right.
take care. Bye-bye.